My wife was here, she knew, she's quite watching. She's actually today. Am I? Like, no, that's how you do it. Good morning. My name is Vince Fuente, and it is approximately 8:02 a.m., and we're calling the Tarrant Appraisal District Board of Directors meeting to order. We have a quorum with Wendy Burgess absent, and other than that, we have a full quorum here, and we have posted the meeting notice. I want to go ahead and mention, if you're here, please silence your phone. I just noticed mine going off, so good reminder for that. I'm going to also take a privilege here. Chandler, did you want to be able to speak?
Yes.
I want you to go ahead and turn in one. All right. So Will, actually, I'm going to ask Joe Don. I'm sorry I didn't give you a heads up to lead us in our pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor and allegiance to thee, Texas, one today, under God, one and indivisible.
This morning, we have an invocation led by a friend of mine, long-term friend of mine, Lance Cassius. He is a new founder and the CEO of what's called the Forge Room Foundation. And so if you'll come up to the mic, Lance, and lead us in there.
Well, thank you for this privilege to be able to pray over you guys today and gals. And let's bow our heads in prayer and go to our Father. Well, Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this day. We will rejoice and be glad in it because you created it. Your word says that righteousness exalts a nation, and we are so privileged to live in this county, in this community, and we're so thankful for that. And so I just pray for your wisdom and blessing upon these board of directors. And I pray, God, that you would give them humble hearts and wise minds as they steward their responsibilities in this community. And God, we know that they set aside their own interests in order to be here to serve, and we're thankful for that. And oftentimes it is an overlooked duty in this city and in this community. So God, we do lift them up to you for your care. We lift up their families. We know that each member of this board has needs. Their families have needs. And so, God, I pray that you would meet those needs and that you would meet the needs of our community. And again, Lord, we pray for your wisdom and your guidance on this day and for this board. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Lance. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right, we have some action items. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to go to our visitors, into our speakers. And anyway, when you're approaching the microphone, I believe there's a card there that asks you to go through what your name is, what city you're from, and what your agenda item is. If you'd be sure to go through that with us. We have two speakers this morning. Since we only have two, I'm going to allow them 5 minutes rather than 3 for the call meeting. So just to give you all a heads up on that. So, Mr. Daniel J. Bennett, if you'll come to the mic.
Chairperson Fuente, I don't know where the mic is. Is that the mic? It's built in there. Lon Burnham is on his way. And you're going to start at 5, right? So you're going to let the reset the clock. I'll wait.
I mean, it just only does 3 minutes right now.
Oh, is that all done?
So
I misunderstood. Okay, I'll start. All right, my name is Daniel Bennett. I live in the city of White Settlement, and I will be speaking on actually 2 items on the agenda, 10A and 10C. But I want to step back in time, as I always do, because history propels us to the future. I've been walking doors for Jack McCarty, and I got to know Jack, and there's a favorite author he has. And the book's called Good to Great. And it says, it's by Jim Collins, and he has a quote, it says, which states one must face brutal facts before positive change can occur. Well, there's a lot of facts here we need to accept and embrace over the past, and we're slowly doing it. So I want to go back to the Wayback Machine to ARB in 2020. There was a whistleblower came out that said they were tossing affidavits in the trash. They weren't saving evidence. And that particular person that did that day said he was a TAD employee, which we do know TAD loans their employees over to the ARB side. But it was an anonymous email, and Mr. Bunker at the time addressed it. Matter of fact, he put a letter out. A letter from the President Review Board. I won't belabor what he said, but bottom line says, the email does not say when the alleged events occurred or the name of the TARB members or the panel involved, and I'm sharing the anonymous email with all members of the TARB, asking them to report any instances in which the evidence may have been mishandled, thrown out improperly. And it goes on. So then Mr. Law had his response. And that was his, this was dated July 16th. And I'm sure after a thorough review of all the evidence, within an 8-hour period, Mr. Law had a response. And his response was, this morning on July 16th, I received an email regarding certain allegations. And he goes on to say that this is an integral part of the process and there's been no malfeasance. Now, with the history of what we know, I would like to go in the Wayback Machine when we get time to find out what's really happened back then. Because I have the emails, and Mr. Bunker noted it and gave every ARB member. And I bring that up because one of the candidates running for TAD, I won't state the person's name, but I believe was part of that process and actually was involved in those very circumstances. That's all I'll say at this point. Okay, let's move on. Cybersecurity. I have a card from a gentleman whose door I did knock on. I'll give it to Matthew. Mr. Tepper. He's a cybersecurity expert, international cybersecurity. His name is Paul Kendall. I've spoken to him. I'm sure he wants to apply if you do an RFQ. I would like to make sure his proposal comes back to you for consideration. Great guy. All right, and last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about your joining this interlocal agreement with this buying pact. Anytime I see the word TASB, my radar goes up. And I understand when I go to these school boards and and especially the Commissioners Court, they're within these consortiums where they get power of purchase and better pricing. I would like us not to give TASB a penny. And that's what I would like to see as a citizen. I won't go into the reasons why, but I'm hoping that you will take a hard look at that and do a 180. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Appreciate that. Mr. Chandler. And again, Mr. Chandler, what's going to happen is it's going to count down to 3 and then he'll reset and you'll get 2 more minutes.
Terrific. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to address the board, Chief Appraiser, and everybody in attendance here. And first, I'll just say my name is Chandler Crouch. I live in the city of Fort Worth, and I would like to revise what I put on the document there. I'm going to be speaking, I guess, in general terms, but also item 8 and item 10A and 10B, I think is what all my comments will fall under. And I just want to start off by commenting on the public speaking adjustment that Mr. Ponte made, giving us 5 minutes. Thank you so much for that. One thing that I noticed, there's been a lot of crazy stuff going on in Commissioners Court in the news lately. One thing I noticed was, Mr. O'Hare, I know it relates to public comments. There was somebody that had something very negative to say about him, but whenever it was his turn to talk at the podium, he wasn't around. And Mr. O'Hare, to his credit, said, let's give that guy some consideration. Let him come back in the room and say some very negative things. And I thought, wow, that's a very admirable thing to give your adversaries a time like that. So anyway, I just appreciate it.
The thing that I wanted to talk about today is the security issue, the ransomware. I represent a lot of people here in Tarrant County, and so and then I also have just been around for a while. I've gotten to see how the appraisal district operates, how the board has conducted themselves in the past, and I feel like one of the challenges that we have, I don't know if it's something that is pervasive in all government entities. This is the only one I really know. But something that I think is probably different is that between government sector and private sector is that in the private sector, you generally have a CEO who doesn't have to answer to anybody, who can make decisions and has direct consequences for their actions. And so it puts a hierarchy of caring involved. And so in a situation like this, we've got this ransomware deal. You guys are not going to want to expose yourselves to stuff that you can be held liable for, which I think is reasonable and probably smart. Same thing for the chief appraiser. He's just, everybody's got a different role. So you hire somebody to do the work to look into the dark web, look at the data and dig to see what's there. And you need to rely on those people. I don't know if that person is going to have the level of care that somebody like a CEO would have in a private organization. Since I don't hold a government position and my obligation is to the, that is my phone, my phone. You just hit the button on there. Yeah, thanks.
You saw ice cream?
No, hey, thanks for the extra time. I really appreciate it. Here's the thing. I took it upon myself to figure out how to surf the dark web for the first time ever and find where this information was published and looked at the information that was published to just see what's out there. One thing that I found is, number one, thankfully, it's not very easy to find unless you're really accustomed to how to surf the dark web and access this stuff. It's not easy to find. Another thing is that you would see that I think it's safe to say every single comment I've made about what has been exposed on the internet was validated by what I saw with my own two eyes. Every single thing that I said might have been exposed on the internet was absolutely exposed. So you can go back and look at that. I don't want to talk about it too much. There's a number of 300 people that y'all said was exposed on the internet. And when I saw the information that I did, it was different. It had a different feeling to me. It's almost like, I gotta wrap it up. Okay.
Yeah, but I want you to finish.
Okay. Thank you. If you just, I'm not going to be able to briefly, but I'm just saying it felt violating for me to see somebody's information. And I just thought if that was me, it just felt so wrong. And so it's almost like, what is one life worth is kind of the idea. It's not, life and death situation, but it was a situation where like that person's entire digital life was at stake. And I don't think that that's going to affect a lot of people, but for that one person, I was just like, God, here's what it's going to take. Let me give you really quick. I think this is constructive. The kind of stuff that I was looking at is not going to be solved by a cybersecurity expert. If you just imagine somebody takes a sheet of paper, puts all this sensitive information, wads it up, unfolds it, takes a photo, and then uploads it to a server, that's what we're dealing with. It's not going to be a scan that does it. It's going to take somebody that's like, $10, $15 an hour that just clicks on all these documents to see what's on there is going to be the person that's going to find this stuff. Okay. I'd be happy to give you any more insights, answer any questions, but I have outrun my time. Thank you for your patience on let me finish.
Yeah, I do want to address that to a certain degree. And again, I'm no expert either, Chandler. The security team we dealt with, the team we have together, I thought did an amazing job from me as a CEO of my own business. And they looked in depth and they had an amazing amount of care. And there was eyeballs on the documents. So they went through, they did electronic sort of I think it was 400,000 files. Then they got it down to where they actually got a group and they put physical eyeballs on them. So it was a very detailed look at what was going to go out there. And again, we had to weigh the risk, we have to weigh the consequences, etc. But just for whatever it's worth, this team, that it was a third-party team, but it was, I thought, exceptional. Now, again, it's my first exposure to ransomware, so, maybe there's more to be learned, but I appreciate what you had to say.
Well, I probably should apologize to you. I didn't call you. I feel like this is an issue that is a board level issue, so I didn't go to the chief appraiser. And Mr. Diaz, longest serving member on the board, so I picked up the phone and called him whenever I saw what I saw. I called him to say, hey, look, here's some stuff that I saw. I only called him after I found the information. I picked up and I didn't spend a lot of time doing it. I picked up the phone and called the people whose information it was. I said, hey, have you received a letter from TAD in the mail? They said no. And so I said, okay, this is concerning. So I don't doubt that the person that did the search, they gave you that confidence. I'm just saying they didn't give me that confidence because I did the verification. I would have liked to give you that heads up. I just didn't have your phone number.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, he's speaking to specifically to an agenda item.
Yeah, no, we've got cybersecurity all over this agenda. So, well, as soon as you started talking, I picked up my agenda. So,
I would like to engage. So, Mr. Crouch, is it your belief that there are probably more than 300 people whose information is affected by this?
It's my belief. I can't say with certainty just because it's laborious to find and to like quantify it. It's click, read. I mean, that's the only way to really come up with a count like that. And I just honestly didn't spend that much time.
One of the things that I've noticed in this process, first of all, I feel like I'm pretty well informed for the first time in 5 years when something comes up. Also, as Mr. Puente had pointed out, there's been a process that they went through. I think they would admit they could have missed something, but it was pretty thorough. Time is going to tell, and I guess we'll say just the jury is still out on that, but I feel pretty good about the numbers that they gave us because of the process they went through, and Mr. Puente has described it a little bit, but in the time that they had, and frankly, I was asking them to be a little faster, but they got everything done. I know they were working nights and weekends, so to speak, in just a few days they were working. So I feel pretty confident in that number, and the post-mortem of that will tell the truth, I think, but I'm pretty convinced we're going to get to the bottom of that. Also, there's information that's already out there on everybody on the web. And so there are certain things that are protected by law, and there's other things that aren't that big a deal. And so that can come into it as well. So you sent me, I think, 2 emails on this, and I forwarded those to our chief appraiser. I think it's good that you sent it to a board member first, because it is a board level consideration because of the situation. Thank you as always for being upfront and honest about it.
Corey, you had a comment?
Yes, I've never been on the dark web. I don't know how to get there, but I'm a former federal employee, and we've had breach from China onto the federal personnel thing. So my data's out there. I know it's out there. When AT&T had their breach recently, I never received anything from AT&T. But because of the cybersecurity system that the federal government now has on me, they sent me an alert telling me my security number, my cell number, my home address, all that had been hacked into at the AT&T level. So you never know where this data comes from, where they're pulling it from, or anything. I just get alerts now telling me someone has now gotten your information again. So I know what you said about feeling violated or whatever. I don't care anymore because it's out there. And I have other security implementation done on all my accounts and everything because I'm aware of that. So as a board member on TAD, I would advise everybody, whether you received a letter or not, you should practice safe security and change your passwords. And everybody who's asked me anything, I just tell them, you know what, just change your passwords. Everybody should be doing that on a frequent basis anyway. So the dark web's out there, and I don't know that there's anything we can do. Like Mr. Diaz said, there's information you can get on a query on almost everybody, somewhere, somehow. And it's a shame that we're at that point in time that we have to be worried about stuff.
Thank you, Gloria. Morning, Wendy. Gary?
Yes, sir. I just have a short comment. I'm concerned that we're getting too focused on whether there's 300, 295, 3,000. Doesn't matter. One is too many. And to just be focused and hung up on the number is really missing the point. The point is, we got hacked, we have a problem, we're making strides to get that resolved. And that's where the focus needs to be, as opposed to just saying, okay, we got hacked, washing our hands and say, we're done. That's not where we're at. But I would just like the community to get off of that number, 300, because when all is said and done, it may be more and it may be less. And we'll let it unravel and see where it goes. Like Mr. Dion said, in the very near future. So in my opinion, one is too many. The rest of the numbers to me are not that relevant.
I appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and move the meeting on. Thank you, Mr. Chandler.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. I apologize. We're not going to end at 10 a.m. now. All right. We have item 6, action items. We don't have a consent agenda because this board doesn't seem to like consent agenda. And I like that about this board. So we have an action item regarding the approval of the Board of Directors meetings minutes for March 1st, March 25th, and April 1st of 2024. So moved. Got a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Motion passes almost like a consent item. We have item B, action proposed title and salary changes for 2024 TAD budget, which you have a document here that backs it up. It is an item we did discuss previously, but I open it up if there's a motion or any other item.
I move to approve.
You moved to approve? I got a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So the motion passes just like another consent agenda. All right, item C, review and possible action on contract for upcoming board of directors at large election with the Tarrant County Elections Administrator. Let's go ahead and look at that. Go to that for a second. So we have a lengthy document in here. Our pages aren't numbered, but I counted at page 13. Well, actually, page 12 is where it goes into the detail. Jonah, let me go ahead and ask you just to get any general comments on this.
The main thing is the estimated cost right now is $645,000 for the election. The original estimate had been $300,000. So we do have to pay 75% upfront. So we have to pay $484,000 pretty quick. And then we'll have to pay the remaining amount later.
And this is due to the number of polling sites is much larger than any other of the.
Yes, ma'am, and the overall participation by the other entities. So had more entities have an election at this time, then it could be a less of a share for us to pay.
Fewer participation, more portion.
Yes, ma'am.
You can clarify also, please, that this is not optional.
Yes, this is a state mandate. State mandate. So we have to do this to continue to operate, otherwise we'll be violating the law.
So I'd like to repeat that to the public. 645,000, it could be more, it could be less, but that's what they're giving us a number of. This is an unfunded mandate by the state legislature. I don't think they often know what the cost is going to be of something they legislate. It is a great thing we're doing. Wish we could have timed it with another election so we wouldn't be out there on our own. We're also running up against runoff elections. We're running up against local elections. So it's a very confusing time for the public and doesn't, I don't think it serves us well in that sense, but it is what it is. But the point being, sometimes we have to spend money that we didn't budget, that we don't necessarily want to spend. We want to have the election, but we don't want to spend that money. And that's a great deal of money. So just want to note that as well. I do go into the budget note at the bottom of that. Once the 2023 financial audit is completed, TAD staff will review and recommend any necessary recommitment of funds to the board. So if we approve this, where are we approving the money to come out of? And then secondly, this does seem like an item we should go and ask for a budget amendment on, since it's a huge amount of money and it is a required expense that we didn't know to budget.
It's up to y'all. I mean, we can either go back to the entities and ask for additional money, or we can take it out of our reserve funds. Later, when we get into budget stuff, we do have a level of funds, $10 or $11 million available that we could use instead of asking the entities, or we could go back and ask the entities for additional funding.
And this request is just for the deposit amount. Is that correct? You're not asking for the total right now on this request, 645,000. You're just asking for the 484.
Right now, yes, ma'am. The actual cost may not be the full 645, so we'll get the final bill. Yes, yeah.
So again, when I'm a little bit, I don't know if the word's confusion, normally when we vote on money, we are also voting where it's coming from, but in this case, we are not.
We'll have the audit, the 2023 audit, so any remaining funds from that, there may not be that much left over 2023 though. But essentially, we would take it out of the community reserves.
And so this election is not by plurality, it's by percentage.
You have to have a majority.
There's 3 different places that people are running
Right.
for. And in any one of those places, whoever wins it has to get 50 plus 1.
Just want to make sure that we don't get put on the board that way, but these 3 positions
Right.
being elected different.
That's correct. Your positions, there's really always been 5 general positions, and whoever the top 5 vote getters are from the entities are the ones that sit in the entity appointed ones. The elected positions, there are 3 separate places, and the individual candidates have signed up to run for either place 1, place 2, or place 3.
That's why this election is so different than the current board.
Could you also please explain the cadence that these elections are going to occur moving forward and the costs that will be associated?
Yeah, so one of the things that the legislature did, what Mr. Puente was talking about, is this is the very first time that we've ever had the public electing members of the Appraisal District Board of Directors. And because the legislature wanted to get started on it early, they set the very first election for the May local election date. Moving forward, there will be an election every other year, and that election will take place in November. And that election will be in the November of the years that we either vote for the governor or we vote for the president. So while it's apparently going to be $645,000 this year, the next election, which will be the next November, that we've got a governor or the president on the ballot, we will be sharing the cost of that election with all the other entities that come out. And so that $645,000 number ought to come down to something much smaller. I think Mr. Bobbitt commented we were paying 75% of the cost of this election. And I don't know exactly how many things will be on the ballot, but my guess is it will be at 5, 10, 15% of the cost of the election, if not lower, when it's held in November.
So right now we're at $80,000, a little bit over $80,000 per candidate for this election.
$250,000, $220,000 per seat.
Yeah. So again, I'm going to try to get my concern out one more time as far as what we're voting on. I want to be sure that we have a consideration for, I'm saying a consideration for asking for a budget amendment for this item versus just pulling it automatically from the contingent, the reserve fund. Does that, Mr. Chairman, do I need to, if I want that, does that somehow need to change how the motion's done?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it does make sense to do a budget amendment because the money is, and I'm not exactly sure if it's just money that's sitting there or if it's money that's been committed or allocated for another purpose. But the money for y'all had kept it needed to have been committed or allocated to something. And now you all are going to change what it is. And the point of the budget is twofold. It's one, so that y'all make sure that entities know what the total amount of money they're willing to pay to fund the appraisal district is.
but the other is to identify specifically what it is that you all are going to spend the money on. And so if y'all want to do it as a budget amendment, I think that makes a lot of sense. And of course, to do a budget amendment, we've got to give notice to the entities and all of that. So it might be that the best thing to do is, because I assume the payment is due fairly soon, to approve making the payment and maybe at the same time send out notices to the entities that y'all are going to do a budget amendment and approve the budget amendment and let them know. That way you can get the election paid for, but we can also make sure that our priorities are promises as far as the budget goes.
And we can also, when we do the amendment, include the whole amount, not just the
And if you get fortunate, maybe by the time you vote on the amendment, it will be after the audit has come through and you'll know what kind of excess funds you have. And then that can be part of what you send to the entities. If you want to keep these excess funds to offset the cost of the election. And if it's not enough, then figure out where else.
Brad, do you have any concern with us asking for budget amendment?
No, at first it was about the timing because I do know they need the payment
Right.
pretty soon, but if we can do it that way, we're good.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this and that we send a notice to the entities that a budget amendment.
So we're approving $484,110, correct?
Yes.
Could you include, excuse me, could you include that in your motion? The 484? Because that's what the staff's recommending.
Just add into the staff recommendation that you would like the notice made because you did mention approving the contract itself.
Thank you. I'm going to revise my motion. I'm looking for the actual staff.
6C.
6C.
It's a 12, it's a gem, whatever the
Sort of orange colored seat.
Y'all just give me a minute. I'll get there.
Yours is
Versus a different color.
I think that language is better because it makes include the amount already. So I move that we approve the contract between TAD and the Tarrant County Elections Administrator to conduct the May 4th Board of Directors election and potential runoff election and authorize the chief appraiser to pay the deposit amount of $484,110 within the allotted time frame per the contract to initiate the agreement. And that notice be sent to the entities, notifying them that we intend to do a budget amendment when the costs for the election are in.
second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you very much. All right, so we're on item 7, am I right?
Yes.
Yes. 2025 proposal TAD budget initiation discussion. Let's see, place. What pages here? For what it's worth, I counted to page 35. Page, it looks like this, gentlemen.
What is it?
Ladies. And I will turn this over to Mr. Judah Bobbitt.
This is our proposed 2025. This is really a high water mark. We have not gone through everything in each department looking for where we can cut spending. This has a 4% cost of living adjustment. It has the main change under material supplies and services. It goes from 1.6 million to 4.3. That's really to capture the new CAMA system. So there are some options with the CAMA system that we could probably pull back first year and then increment them in the second year. So we probably couldn't adopt everything usefully the first year. So we'd probably buying and paying for services and features that we couldn't actually fully utilize. So we could probably save some money by pulling it down just a little bit the first year. We believe under the salaries and benefits, we have some unfunded for positions that have not been fulfilled historically. we would probably pull some out, basically defund them, leave the positions in the budget, but defund them. Until at least we get to the Canvas system and actually see what our requirements are. So right now, overall, it's a 12.4%, almost 12.5% increase. The budget or the Canvas system alone is roughly a 10% increase. It's $3 million roughly if we buy the full package. And so really, we're looking at about a 2.5% increase normally from our budget, but we can probably maintain that at a flat amount plus 8 to 10% for the Canvas system. And so a lot of this is to kind of just give you all an idea of kind of what we're thinking and then kind of get y'all's feedback and general impressions so we can refine it for the May 10th meeting.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I have to tell you, I've never seen, we're going into another year decreasing any amounts. I see that you're doing that in several areas here. Most budgets increase their amounts, and you've done some changes up, like the appraisal review board compensation is going down, and so on.
That's not, we're paying them less. That's just, they haven't been fully utilized the past years. And so we just don't need that much money.
Going into
Yes,
2025.
ma'am.
And then also, down in the financing method, you show no 9/11 district contract payment. What happened there?
We had a contract with 9/11 for 911 district for pictometry contract. So we basically had the contract and the 9/11 district paid us for a portion of it. So it's a shared contract essentially. Going forward, I think they have taken the lead in it and we'll be paying them.
You'll be paying them?
Yes, ma'am. They've taken over the contract essentially.
Okay.
And so whereas before they were paying us for their share of it. So now we're reversing positions where they'll establish the contract and we'll pay them as instead.
Okay, now also, you had mentioned in one of our previous meetings that you were looking at the possibility of doing either some remodeling in this building or finding another facility to house the TAP.
Right now, we're going to hold off on that. It's a pretty long process. We'd have to we'd have to present 3 to 4 options to y'all and to the entities to get approval. There's a whole financing issue because appraisal districts can't go out and get a bond like cities and counties can. So we have to, there's some other methods to fund it. Basically, it's like a lease purchase agreement. So it's a complicated process. It takes a while.
And you have no initial cost to move forward in that direction?
No.
He also doesn't have the board's, I'm going to make a comment, the board's, he hasn't formally requested this board's support in that direction.
But he mentioned it at a meeting.
He mentioned it, but he
Right.
hadn't had a discussion on whether or not this is something we're interested in doing at the board or not.
Part of the Canvas system,
Now's the time to discuss it since we're talking about the budget.
we'll probably wait till the next fiscal year. It probably wouldn't be something we do for 2025. With the new Canvas system, I think we'll have our hands full. A lot of what the new Canvas system will do, it offers like a WebEx component or a Zoom component, so people can do remote hearings. Some of the other counties have had great success and leave up to 60% of the hearings and move to remote. And it reduces the amount of traffic into the building. A lot of people don't have to spend time driving to the district, or waiting in line for 2 or 3 hours. So you basically you can sit at your office, sit at home, participate when it's your turn, and then you go back to your day and so you maybe spend 30 minutes every day being spent. So we would like to see that implemented and see how well it's adopted before we really move on and have a better idea of how much space we need.
Rich, I guess. Gary, go ahead, Gary. It's a tie, Gary.
Okay. Back to that point, Mr. Bobbitt, when you're referring to the CAMA and you're referring to that you're gonna try to get it where somebody can, protest it from their office or home or whatever, are you referring to the informal process or are you talking about the actual appraisal review board process?
Both.
Okay. But doesn't the law allow those individuals to have a physical hearing?
It does, yes.
Okay.
They'll still be allowed to. It would just be an option. And like I say, some counties have really adopted it, or some communities have really adopted it, and those people prefer to do it remotely instead
So
of.
that's a choice on the taxpayer,
Yes, sir, completely.
not mandated by the district or
No,
the ARB.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I want to get that on the record.
Yes, sir.
Okay, secondly, as it relates to the, following up on Ms. Pena's comment, relative to facilities, it was my understanding, and of course, I've been off the board for a little while, but we had a budget line item of, for, just that, for, facilities, and I don't know where it is, or is it gone? Have we spent it, or we had an item set aside with X amount of dollars? I can't remember the exact amount.
Are you saying for facilities acquisition or facilities maintenance?
Well, either one, acquisition, upgrade, whatever. I know in the past we've had that.
Gary, look at the next page. And you'll see in our fund balances. Is that what you're referring to?
Building
Building
maintenance.
maintenance.
No, not maintenance, no. This was actually, because I remember in the past, Mr. Law would say, we've got X amount of dollars here for a new facility, wherever that might be. And the possibility of upgrading this facility if we were gonna stay here. So not maintenance, but just upgrades. There's no longer any, has that all been spent?
That I'm not sure about. First I've heard about.
Okay, I'm pretty sure. Do you remember, Mr. Dion?
Bacon.
It is, it's vague with me too.
I know we have, we've looked at expansion. I've seen some plans.
Yeah.
Subcommittee we had that didn't go anywhere from years ago. We also did make some advancement on an annex last year. I'm not sure how that, but we should look at it.
Okay.
So are you asking for them to go back and look at prior budgets and see if there was a line item for building acquisition?
Yes,
And where did it go?
if there was one, yeah, that's the follow-up
Okay,
question.
where to go? So Brad will do that.
What happened to it?
So just to clarify how the budget works with the district is we all even have committed funds or reserve funds, whatever you want to call it. For an appraisal district, those are really a little bit of misnomers because all the money that you have really belongs to the entities that fund you. So if you had it in a year, you had certain dollars that were in the budget that were committed or reserved for a new building, and it didn't get rolled over into the following year's budget, then that money would have been part of what it gets returned to the entities or becomes the following year's excess, which then could be used for things like paying for the election. But I'm sure that staff can go back and track the history of the budgets and see what happened to that particular line.
If that, in fact, is accurate, if it happened that way, we'll never get a new building. Because if you can't start building a fund to, I mean, it's like when I want a new car, I have to start saving today and roll it over year to year in order to get to that new car, whenever I can get to that level.
Right.
So how do we do that?
Right. So the way that would work is like at the end of this year, y'all had $100,000 in funds that was above, that you got from the entities, what was above what was spent. Then for putting together the 25 budget, you could put $100,000 and commit that for a new building. Then when you get to 26, if you had another 100,000, you could add that 100,000 and have a line item in the 26 budget that would be for 200,000 and continue building it up until you got to an amount that
That's
was
the number
enough
I'm
to make a
looking
down payment or whatever else you might.
That's exactly the number I'm looking for.
Because some of these line items have where, it shows we no longer are doing that. But the item is there. So this, what we may find out, Mr. Lozada, is that it was so many years past, that's why it's no longer being reflected. I'm hoping that's not the case, but because the conversation came up, since you've been our chief appraiser, I want to make sure you have what you need in order to implement that.
Right.
And that if you needed any seed money and we planted it in 2025, because that's where you thought it was going to land. If you don't think that's the case, then I'm okay with that. But now is the time to identify.
Alan?
So, just a couple of clarification items. Material supply and services is showing 161.8% increase. That is the camera
Yes,
system, correct? Okay, so that will fall into that line item.
Yes, sir.
And then on our fund balances, I'll just note we have 2.651 roughly thousand or 2.6 million unassigned reserve funds that are excess reserves are above the 25%.
Yes, sir.
And that's currently not committed and could be allocated towards item that Mr. Lasada was mentioning earlier.
They have a new phone system, a new security software,
Yes.
we got a lot of expenses. Yes, sir.
Do you have an estimate, talking to other counties when they've implemented this new approach and it reduces the demand on the space that we have? What that turns out to?
No, sir. It just reduced the amount of traffic coming into the building, but I don't think anybody has decreased the size of the building.
But do you have an estimate just based on what you've heard off the cuff, of course, in front of the cameras? How much of that traffic has
Well, from what I've heard was about 60% of the traffic was reduced. And so, I mean, we have 8 chairs for the ARB lobby. So we're woefully behind where I think what our lobby should be. And so even with, 60% of our 20,000 hearings going remote, I still don't think we have a big enough lobby to maintain the rest, but at least getting us to the right spot.
Well, we'll be in a better position once CAMA is implemented.
Yes, sir.
And all that, to really know what our needs are, because that is a substantial reduction.
Yes, sir. And every community is a little different. So some communities adopted the technology, some don't. So we need to kind of see what our local adoption is. Because if only 20% adopted, then that'll put us in different choice. I hate to expand the building or do something and then realize we didn't do it enough because we expected 60% uptake on web traffic.
So I want to make a clear statement here. We're, to the public and to the news camera, we are not authorizing moving forward on a remodel or a building at this time. We're simply looking at the budget. So I just want to get that clear. Joe Don, Brad, something I would like to see. So looking at this sheet, you got the 2023 actual. I'd like the actual, if we can do this reasonably, to put down what was budgeted spent and then another column on, so to bring some of these numbers down on what was voted on to come out of reserves. So, I don't know, let's say litigation arbitration. Let's say we had something big, so we had to pull $500,000 out of reserves, and that's part of that 1.6 million. I like to separate what our operating expenses were from exceptional expenses, and then same thing for the 2020. I'm sorry, maybe that's for the 20. Yeah, but anyway, going into the 2025 budget, what you want for operating, and then the breakdown if there's a specific expense that we're having to incur. Because again, in my world, we look at what it takes to operate, and then we have exceptions. And what I don't want is those exceptions from past years to be, oh, yeah, we spent that much last year, we can spend that much again this year. So just to know what were exceptions. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. We do have another spreadsheet that has past year proposed budget or final budget and then the actual expense. So that way you can see what the board originally had planned and then what the final actual expenses were. That might give you all a better understanding of how we were doing forecasting and where those exceptions are.
Yes, sir.
I still have a couple more.
Yes, sir.
All right. As it relates to direct salaries, it shows at a potential 3.7%. And I'm not arguing that. I'm just trying to figure out the distribution. Is it fair to say that some of that is because of the restaffing that you did and when you came on, salaries of new executives or whatever, is that incorporated in that, or is that a zero? In other words, did you take it from somewhere else and it zeroed itself out?
Well, right now, I think we just plug in a 4% COLA across the board. So
So it's a 4%.
cost of living adjustment. And so, but even though this shows 18 million for the direct salaries, I think we can pull that down some because there are positions that typically are not filled.
And then the next question that I have is legal litigation and arbitration expense. I would like to see that get down by, or reduced by $350,000 if we can.
Wouldn't we all?
Well, let me tell you where I'm going with it. Is that $350,000 was paid to one attorney that represented TAD in the past out of sole source agreement. I believe that attorney's gone, was not a staff position, but still, I haven't seen any moves to, I mean, I don't want to just see it get absorbed is what I'm trying to say. If that, in fact, is a net gain, it needs to be reduced.
Yes, but
Does that include our current attorney?
I'm not sure where Matthew is billed at.
Litigation attorney.
I don't think anything close to that. If y'all like to redo the contract while you're messing with it, I'd certainly be open to a discussion.
Could we hear from our expert?
I'm being officially invited up here. I'll speak. I can answer that question.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, William Durham. I'm the Director of Commercial Property. Under my department is also litigation. That's where I've spent 15 of my 16 years here at TAD. It's not our idea to get sued, but it happens.
Yep.
When I started, we had 500 suits. Fast forward, we have 700. Fast forward a couple more years, we have 900. We're at nearly 1,600 now. So in my short time here, 16 years, there's been a 300% increase. All of that 1.6 million or 1.5 million is spread out, excuse me, among the attorneys that represent us. None of it goes to the attorney you're talking about. She has no more suit representation with us. She's retired. But as you can imagine, if you spend a measly $1,000 per lawsuit on lawyers and you have 1,600, that's 1.6 million. If we had 700 of them, it would be 700,000. And the budget when I began was around 600,000. But there's more litigation. Tarrant County's grown. The litigation community has grown. This is not a one-off with Tarrant Appraisal District. Denton has gone up 300% in the same time period. Dallas has gone from 1,800 suits to 3,147 for 2023. Of course, Harris is its own. They spend 15 million on litigation. They're their own. But we're, as far as volume, we're in line with Travis and Bear, which are more similar to us in size. Dallas has a lot more volume than we do. And Denton and Collin, while they have 500 or 600 suits, that's a lot for them. They had 200 just 10 years ago. Those are the Denton numbers. I can actually put something a little more organized in front of you, but there's no $350,000 to be saved. There would be if we had 350 less lawsuits, but we don't. They're going up, not there.
So that begs the question, why are we not settling?
We are.
They are, that's lit.
$1,000, we're settling.
Okay.
$1,000 per suit in litigation. And we have difficult plaintiffs where we spend 5, 10, 15, 20, 30,000.
Right.
So we pray for the routine cases that we can get out of there for $700. And I just have to look at the business people on the panel and this is dirt cheap, both in the aggregate number, $700, $800, and both in the hourly rate. We're about half of what the plaintiff's attorneys are, as far as what we pay our attorneys in terms of an hourly rate. I'm always looking for new ideas and I actually have a few, but to save
taxpayers' money, since we're funded by entities. But we also can't be a penny wise and a pound foolish. We have to represent ourselves. We can't practice law ourselves, right? So be glad to talk to you off, out of this, or whomever's interested, but that's why the numbers are as high as they are. We get
I have no
sued.
reason to dispute anything that Mr. Durham says. I have the ultimate amount of respect for him. I just think it's just so easy, and this has not been directed to you. It's more historical, even when you weren't here, that we just automatically just roll in legal expenses. And since I've been on the board before, I was on the ARB before, I very seldom ever hear of a legal budget status quo or being reduced unless an individual board member says, I need $200,000 cut out of that to make that work, and then the board votes on it. At a minimum, and I'm all about negotiation, so I'm listening to what you're saying very clearly. Maybe we just consider holding in the line of where it was last year. But I'm very uncomfortable about just absorbing things like that. So, and I know you got a job to do, and I'm not trying to make it any harder. Well, I guess maybe I am, but let's be truthful.
Well, again, if the suits did not exist, I would be glad to cut it immediately, but they do. And we didn't initiate a single one of them. We're the defendant in every single case. So it wasn't our choice.
So William, for purpose of clarity, if someone sues us, we are going to defend ourselves, correct? So whatever that budgetary line item is, we will still have the actual that could vary higher or lower.
Yeah, I mean, if we reduce this line item to 1.3 million, we'll just simply go over budget 400,000. It's going to exist. We do not practice law without a license.
Appreciate the clarity.
Would say, I know Mr. Durham mentioned that he's got some ideas about ways that the litigation budget could conceivably come down. Y'all can maybe do it more efficiently. Some of those, we don't handle any of the litigation for the Tarrant Appraisal District because we represent the board, but some of those other larger districts that he did mention, including Bear and Travis, we do handle a significant amount of the litigation for those particular appraisal districts. And, we have been working over the last 10, 15 years is appraisal district litigation has skyrocketed on ways that we can do things that are more efficient and more effective to get it done. And I think it might be worthy to have a discussion with the commercial and the litigation department and everybody else to see if there are some ways that we could streamline and more efficiently handle the litigation. Because he's right, you do need a lawyer to, at a minimum, file an answer and appear in the case. And if the public knows that you don't have a budget and you're not going to fight your litigation, you'll have 3 times the number of seats next year. But I do think appraisal district litigation is a very unique animal. It's not like any other type of litigation that goes through the court systems in the state of Texas. And as a result, there are some unique things that can be done to try to streamline it. And if you've got a concern about the litigation budget, sounds like Mr. Durham has some pretty good ideas about how to bring that down already. I know I have some ideas that have worked for some other districts, and I'm sure there's other stakeholders who would want to participate in that as well. I think that might be something worth looking at for this district.
So Mr. Durham, I for one would be very interested in your proposals and what we can do to do things better in this way. And I would like to have that discussion as we're going through the budgetary cycle. I'm not sure where everyone else is.
I agree.
I would say, but I would like to say that a lot of that needs to be discussed in executive session because a lot of our strategy and stuff, we don't need to be sure. We've got to ruin our chances.
I would agree with that 100%.
Lori, did you have a final comment on the subject?
So what do we pay Mr. Tucker from? Where is he in this budget?
Yeah, if I could answer that partially, I want to go back and kind of bring this all together because we've been talking about the cost of litigation. A lot of what the previous attorney was doing was litigation and then other things. And that's why we separated out those roles. So the litigation, she still handled some of it, and then Mr. Tepper came. And, I guess you could tell us exactly how much we paid you, which will answer the question, how much we haven't paid.
We talked
Very
about
reasonable.
that in one of our meetings, but I just want
So,
to know where are these line items?
So Brad, if you
paid from?
would you come send her an email with it? I'm gonna guess it's under professional services, but let him do the research and he'll get you that information.
He advises the board.
Right, but where are we paying from?
She just wants to see the line item, so where it's at, the line item.
And I'll run my bills and see what it's been over the last year or so.
I know you're cheap and we want you to stay cheap.
Very inexpensive and a bargain is the phrase I've heard.
I've got one more.
While the costs haven't been high, Mr. Tepper's been with us for a couple of years. The first 3 months he was coming, wondering why he was here. And I think he learned why he was here, shortly, I guess, starting in May, almost 2 years ago. But he really has done a very, very good job, and he's been very available to the board and individual board members. And he's done a really good job from my standpoint. And every time I hear how their business works and how much we have paid, I really haven't paid nearly as much as we could. That has been a very, very substantial change that this board has made.
Okay, so, I've got one other comment on the budget, but is there other comments on the budget? Other questions you might have, because again, this is for discussion. There's no action we're taking. Any other board member comment? My final comment on it is, and I've shared this with Brad and Jodan, that my goal for our budget may not be a reasonable goal or not. You notice I asked about separating the funds we approved out of the reserves versus what we actually spent. And what I'm going to refer to as operating. My goal is to get an operating budget, with the exception of the major purchases we need to make for security, et cetera, at zero or below last year. I want to, and that's the mode business is in, that's the mode our community is in. Our taxpayers don't have more funds these days, they have less funds because of inflation, et cetera, and we need to find a way to do that. Now, part of it is, we'll always seem to be approving, well, we've got it in the budget, we're gonna take from this part of the budget and from this part of the budget. Well, I think we need to fine tune that where we're not asking for so many exceptions, and it's actually budget's one thing. And secondly, like we've talked about, we have roles that never get filled, but we got them budgeted for. And I think it's time to bring that down. So we show the entities, we show the public that we're trying to be as disciplined as we can, as good a stewards of the resource we can. And in an ideal world, that we come up with an operating budget that is zero or even less than last year. Then we have the exceptions that we know are major expenses that we've got to incur. And yeah, that'll put us over last year probably, most likely, but at least it's itemized. And so, again, the goodwill of showing that we're going to operate this organization in a very effective method and at a lower cost if at all possible. So that's what I'm asking for. Any other comment? All right, then we're going to move to item 8. We are going to recess to executive closed session pursuant to the following parts of the Texas Open Meetings Act, Government Code Chapter 551, Section 551.076, deliberation regarding security devices, security software, or security audits. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how long that will take, but when we come back out, then we'll resume our action items. Thank you very much. Let's break to executive committee. Executive session. Good morning still, I think. Thank y'all for hanging out with us. We're going to return to open session. It's approximately 11:20 a.m. We're reconvened in open session for possible further discussion and possible action on items deliberated in executive session related to security devices, security software, and/or security audits. We have 4 items we're going to specifically address. Before we do that, I'm going to call on Joe Don to give us an update on our, if you will, in general, where we are in terms of the ransom. Not the ransom, you know what I mean. Recovery, thank you.
Most of our systems have come back online. We have completely reset our desktop PCs. Our public facing phones are up, have been up for a while. The website we're still working on. We expect that to come up later this week with dashboard, the online protest, and the value negotiation. So we expect those items to come online at some point this week. And then with the website, we do want to clarify that the website itself, the new website, has never been actually compromised with the ransomware attack. When everything happened, we severed the connection internally, so the website did not have access to our internal database and servers. And so it was to protect itself and protect the website. So the website is still secure, this new version. And so we want to make that clear to the public that it is, we still have faith and trust in the new website. It is held up. And so we have less concerns about it. We're working through moving forward with some other items that the board will act on in a little bit that we think will move us to the next step and further secure the network. Basically, working through an order of priority.
Okay. Covered, right? All right. We have we're on action item 10A. There'll be 10B, 10C, and 10D that we're also addressed. We're going to take these up one at a time. Action item 10A, consider and possible action on engagement with a cybersecurity consultant and consider moving committed funds to the general fund for purchase of this item. Let me make a note. All three of these items will be the phrase moving from the committed funds. So what we're doing is these are not budgeted items, but we do have monies in reserve. We're moving reserve money to cover this, and then we can balance at the end of the year depending on the total expenditures. I just wanted for the record that we're noting that this was not budgeted. It's coming out of reserves. We're not asking for any special additional monies from the entities. And of course, all these items relate to becoming more secure. So yes, ma'am.
On item action 10A, I move that we authorize the chief appraiser to retain cybersecurity consultant for a cost not to exceed $25,000, and the TAD staff will make efforts to use this budgeted funds to pay for these costs. However, the board further authorizes transfer of up to $25,000 from the CAMA committed fund to the general fund for costs associated with this purchase if necessary.
Second.
Motion is second. Do we have any further discussion? See no further discussion, ask for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Boy, I appreciate that. Action item 10B. Consider and possible action on purchase of network equipment installation. Consider moving committed funds to the general fund for the purchases item. Go ahead. Yes.
Okay, I make a motion to authorize the chief appraiser to purchase network equipment or installation for a cost not to exceed $230,000. TAD staff will make efforts to use the budgeted item funds to pay for these costs. However, the board further authorizes transfer of up to $230,000 from the CAMA committed fund to the general fund for costs associated with this purchase if necessary.
Second.
Motion second. I have a comment. I do want to note the premium materials did state 210,000. In further discussions on our security situation, this board wants to be aggressive, and so we asked them to take one more step. That's the reason we have upped it to the 230,000 for specific security concerns. Any other comment? All right, all those, see no other discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Action item 10C, consider a resolution to adopt an agreement to become a member of the local government purchasing cooperative and to authorize the chair, chief appraiser, or its designated the authority to execute this interlocal participant agreements.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion. I move that we don't do this, that we direct the chief appraiser to stay away from TASB, which is the Texas Association of School Boards. We get to the part of discussion on there.
So your motion is to not contract with TASB in short, right?
That's it.
Is that, okay. Do I have a second? I will second that for further discussion.
This is a tough decision because we're in kind of a crisis right now and we need to be able to move quickly. Joining TASB would allow us to move quickly. The problem with TASB is that it's an association of school boards that spends a lot of time lobbying in Austin for things that are contrary to values of many of our citizens, very contrary to many of our citizens, including when the National Association of School Boards put out a statement that parents showing up at school board meetings should be treated as domestic terrorists. TASB was silent. They had some opposition from some state legislators who spoke up, and it took them 6 months to have the moral clarity to disassociate with a national organization that says that parents showing up to speak at the podium, telling the board their concerns, should be treated as domestic terrorists. If that's the position that they take on that issue, several other issues, what kind of choice is this? A Hobson's choice. Do I vote to have a $375 membership fee to a school board association? We're an appraisal district, just so that we can get through and do things quickly in a situation that requires us to move. I want to be as helpful as I can to the staff, and I've told you all before, the staff has been very open with the board, and I think with the public too, about what we're dealing with in this overall situation. We're in this situation largely because our systems haven't been maintained for years and years. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chairman. That's my motion. It's a little bit of my reasons. If we need more, I've got others.
Okay. For further, just to add to the discussion, just in TASB is Texas Association of School Boards. That item is in here because it speeds up the process of acquiring a new phone system. And the phone system, although it was not hacked, it is anything electronic has the ability to be hacked. And so it's taken a proactive move to bring us in a more secure situation. If we don't go through TASB, then we go through a bid process, which could add about 4 weeks to that time frame to come up with a new phone system to actually have one installed. There's many ifs about when it's actually installed. There's timing with ARB meetings. There's timing of the vendor having the product on hand and they're having the time to schedule it. So all of it's a little bit up in the air anyway. But if we approve the TASB, then they can act quicker because they don't have to go out to bid. If we don't approve TASB, we slow down the process, but we may even get a better deal because it goes out to bid. But a better deal and security better deal takes a lower priority to security at this point. I do want to also mention that I'm not for the membership of TASB. I don't know why this organization has to be with the Texas Association of School Boards. The problem is the possible vendor, that's their only purchasing contract they have available to them at this time. And so again, it's a matter of speed now, but I'm very much opposed to becoming a part of TASB. I'm not gonna read through all this document, it's 8 pages of documents that you're agreeing to, and I don't know what that agreement would be, and I'm not a lawyer anyway. So I'm making that statement. It's a tough situation because we have speed on one hand, and then we have signing ourselves over, if you will, to a buying group that may be questioned. So, any other comment?
We're in a darn if you do and darn if you don't situation here.
That's an excellent quote.
I could modify that with one word a little bit, but I won't do that.
I was trying not to do that.
Joe, Don, I want to ask you to address the timeframe. If we go with, we sign the TASB contract, and we go to the next item, and if we were to approve that item, Children's School District, I'm sorry, on the phone system, we're still talking about weeks out from now before we actually be installing this phone system, and that's still questionable because we don't know when the vendor will get into the product, et cetera, et cetera. Versus if we go out to bid. So if we just address the timeframes.
With this purchasing agreement, we'd be able to, the vendor should be able to acquire the equipment within 4 weeks. It would take roughly 2 weeks for us to get it installed, to work around the ARP schedule. If we wait and go through the RFP process, it adds another 4 to 6 weeks to get the process set up. So we're looking at 6 to 10 weeks, depending on which version we go with.
Any other comments? All right, we have a motion for, could you read us the motion?
The motion is not to contract with TASB.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So we have 3 ayes, 1 no, so we're not going forward with the TASB contract. All right, we're going to action item 10D. Consider and possible action on the purchase of voicemail over IP phone software hardware for the main TAD office, and consider moving committed funds to the general fund for the purchase of this item. I do want to note in the staff recommendations, it starts off by saying authorize the chief appraiser to seek the purchase of phone hardware and software for a 5-year contract. The way it's structured in the staff recommendations is actually a lease, not a purchase. And of course, we don't have a motion at this point, but I do want to point that out. The way the recommendations is a lease. So that is the action item. Do I have any comments or a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to, I'm going to make the motion to approve, but I don't want to read what's right here yet because I have questions on, in our conversation, you can do that, okay? So my motion is to approve the purchase, or excuse me, the lease.
So I think where we are right now, because what staff had presented was to make the purchase through the TASB buy board, which has been rejected by the board now. So you all aren't going to go through that, which means that I think you don't have a contract or a lease to approve. So if I'm understanding what you're trying to say, Ms. Pena, I think you might want to phrase the motion is consideration and ponder a motion to authorize the chief appraiser to take all action, including the publishing of an RFP to purchase or lease voice over IP phone software and hardware for the main TAD office.
Is that something she can read your
Well, you
handwriting?
just read it, so that's fine. That's the motion accepted. That I want to also make sure, because this says a 5-year lease and we can't do it like.
So what would happen if you make the motion the way that I had just suggested is then in a subsequent meeting, after the bids have been out and have been received, at that point in time, staff will bring you another recommendation that will be, is it a purchase, is it a lease, what is the term, and some of the other things that will be there. But since we're not going with the buy board, I don't think those specific terms are really in front of the board yet.
So that's my motion.
I'd like to restate it again.
Authorize the chief appraiser to take all action, including publishing an RFP regarding the VoIP phone hardware and software.
So I got a motion. If I want to amend it, do I wait for the second?
Yeah, you could offer up a friendly amendment right now.
I'm offering for the amendment. Then although I'm just talking first, although that we'll get a contract for us future, I think it ought to also be noted that there must be, if a lease is pursued, that there must be a funding out clause included in that lease. That's my friendly motion.
Accepted.
So we have a motion with amendment. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Got a second. We have discussion. All right. With no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. All right. About to close the meeting. Is there any other comment by any board member? I always want to give you all a chance to, if there's something else on your mind. All right. Now, again, I want to thank all y'all that stayed, all those who are here before, those that spoke. It always adds to the value of this meeting. Again, particularly those that speak, it may not sound like, because we don't normally make a comment back, but we are listening, we're taking notes, and we're trying to act on those things. Again, we appreciate that a great deal. Staff, Julie, I'm sorry,
Jordan.
Jordan, I'm going to get that name down, that appreciate everyone here that's here, appreciate the media being here to cover the truth and nothing but the truth. So help us God. And what an amazing board of directors. We went through tough times last year. Last year's my first year on the board. And Rich, again, I feel for you on the other years you were here. But amazing that we've had a tough time this year, but this board has handled it with excellence. We've called as many meetings as we saw necessary. We met one time, 3 days in a row. And we're going to do what it takes to protect the public, protect our entities, and to do the best to steward what that's been given to us as board members. So again, I appreciate that a great deal. So without any further ado, I've got one more item here. Our next stated board meeting is on 8 a.m. Friday, May 10th. At this time, if there's any other meeting or if someone has some reason to call meeting, we will. That's our next stated meeting. Is there any other proposed agenda items? Or again, you can submit those to us at a later date.
I think agenda items are flowing fast and furious given our circumstances.
Yeah, that's right. They're very flexible. All right, with that, I call the Tarrant County Appraisal District Board of Directors meeting to a close. Thank y'all. It is